based on a woman's menstrual cycle. And these are the basics here. These are the most fundamental building blocks. A lot of the stuff that we go from here all the way up to making our legislation for abortion, or making our legislation for consent laws, or making our legislation for divorce laws and things like that, all that comes back to this. Now, I throw this up here first because this is a menstrual cycle. I'm sure we've all had sex ed at some point in our lives. And what the cycle does is it will follow a 28-day phase, the 14th day being the ovulatory phase, where you can see the egg comes out of the ovum. And you also will notice here, I think this is really the most important part right here, is the hormone levels. And you're looking at luteinous hormone and estrogen, follicular signaling hormone, I believe that's what it is. And so you'll notice the spike that's right here, okay? Everything from this side over here is what I usually call, or right up to right in here is what I call the alpha phase. Right around here is going to be the beta phase. And when I get to the next slide, you can get a little bit better idea of that. But you can see what's going on here. You also see the basal body temperature jumps all the way up until she gets back into her follicular phase. In the follicular phase, or it's also known as the proliferative phase, this is when a woman's her tendencies, her behaviors are going to be more attracted to, or are going to show that she's more attracted to more masculinized men, more alpha men, if you will. Ovulatory shift is a principle, or it's a dynamic that has been studied for, at least for the last 20, 25 years now. During the high fertility phase, women are more interested in alpha masculine dominance, arrogance, with a confident control, so what we were just describing about being an alpha male. They're looking for more masculinized features. All of these features are testosterone based, so they're looking for a man with a lower voice, more muscular, squared off jaw, anything that's a masculinized feature during this phase. And this is what I call, like I said, this is what I call the alpha phase right here. If your communications or your subcommunications are such that you're effeminate, but you still look like a really buff guy, that's sending conflicting signals. So when we're just talking about visual cues, we're just talking about what the guy looks like, what he sounds like, his physical presence. Now, getting beyond that, there's also a need for masculine dominance during this phase. They're looking for confidence and assurance, confidence as well as assertiveness, pretty much any kind of high testosterone cues at that point. Beyond this, into the beta phase, this is where they're looking for more comfort and more looking for that provisioning type thing. We'll talk about that here in a second. But the evolutionary purpose, the latent purpose for this, is to breed with the best breeding stock that a woman can find at that particular time. Hypergamy is defined by two things. It's defined by alpha fucks and beta bucks. And on this side of ovulation, it's alpha fucks. On this side of ovulation, it's beta bucks. Okay? One of the most common questions I get from this is, how do I figure out whether a woman is in the follicular phase or she's in the luteal phase? I don't know any of this kind of stuff. And there are actually ways that men are already sensitive to this, where it's like guys will do these behaviors and they'll try to be very possessive of their girlfriends. Like say right here, she says, I'm gonna go out with my friends and we're gonna go to do a GNO and we really wanna have a girls' night out. We're just having fun, don't worry about that guy. And so what does the guy do is he tries to say, no, bitch, you're not going anywhere. You're my girl and I'm keeping you around. The other behavioral stuff that happens during this is with women who are in a paired set, whether they're married or they've got a long-term boyfriend, if they are not satisfied with that guy at this particular stage, that's when they start nagging, and that's when they start, making the relationship terms very, very difficult for that guy. And to the point where it comes to a head and she just says, fuck you, I'm out, slams the door and goes off and does her own thing. And then 2 days later comes back in her luteal phase, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't. I didn't mean to. I don't know what came over me. Well, she probably really didn't know what came over you. When you can track your woman's, ovulatory phase, assuming you have, a long-term steady girlfriend, once you do that and understanding when you need to up the alpha during this phase and bring things down a little bit in the beta sort of provisioning phase right here, that can help you out with understanding, how you can, if you get that down to a science and really internalize that, you can then use that to your advantage in a long-term relationship. But within that long-term relationship, if the woman is satisfied with that guy, it's during that time that well, first of all, she's more likely to conceive. And second of all, she's more likely to have a higher proceptivity to wanting to have sex with that guy. So there's also a downside to that as well, because if that woman is of a lower SMV than the guy that she's really, really, hot for in her paired couple, that's when she starts mate guarding you. She's the one who will say, I don't want you going out, and she'll get really, really super jealous. And most of the times when that happens, it's almost always right here, because she can tell other women, and women are sensitive to the cues and the subconscious cues to knowing when another woman is in her ovulatory phase. During this phase, women will start dressing sexy. They'll start putting on, different clothes, and they feel sexy. They report feeling sexier during this particular phase. These are the behavioral functions that go along with this. So during the peak fertility phase, she might not know this. A lot of women don't really understand what it is that they're going through when they're doing this, but their voices will drop. Everybody ever hear the sexy voice, and I go, the woman talks to you like this, and it says, yeah, I really want to get it on. That's when you start talking dirty and everything, but the voice intonations come down. That's when sexy voice sort of manifests itself during that phase. They also smell different. Then back that off by order of degrees as to the subtlety with which a woman will dress. During that particular time, if maybe it's your female boss. Your female boss, suddenly she's dressing a little bit differently for that particular week, and then the week afterwards, she's really super bitchy. So those are some signs that guys can use to pick up on that. Now there's cognitive signs and then there's subconscious signs. So you might see her behavior change a little bit differently during this time. And that's about the time when guys start, checking the phone to see if she cheating on me. They might not have any reason to believe she would ever cheat on them, but that'll be the time where that jealousy kind of comes out. And I really feel like jealousy on the part of men is really an evolved mechanism to ensure paternity. And I'm about to get into that here in just a second here, but ornamentation, feeling sexy, flirtation increases as well during this particular time. Vocal cues, scents. The other thing I should also say is if you have a daughter, as I do, during the high fertility phase, there's research that indicates that daughters will avoid their fathers and they will avoid their brothers if they have them during this time, because again, anything that can get away from that can get in the way, I should say, be an obstacle to them becoming pregnant is something that even their hindbrains are really already making contingencies for. So as they get up to, feeling sexier, maybe they're more flirtatious, maybe they've got a guy that they really want to get with. Well, they can't do that if dad or brother's around. And so they'll tend to avoid those relationships until afterwards. So that's yet another manifestation of high fertility. Okay.
Question, Ron?
Yeah, go ahead.
This all makes sense. And if I can summarize it, say the first phase is get good genetics from an alpha that has, that's masculine, good survival rate. The second half is find a cut to support that.
Yes.
Now, the problem I have with this is I've always sort of imagined these phases as stretched out over years,
yes.
not on a short rapid cycling.
Yes.
This helps explain some of the indecisiveness and capriciousness of women to sort of explain the cyclic changes. But
going after the alphas in their 20s, and then they get in their late 30s or
Right.
maybe early 40s. They're like, well, I got to find a good guy now
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
this. So that all makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going to get into that later on here,
okay.
but if you read the second book, that entire book is dedicated
Okay.
to exactly
But the problem is
what
that men don't rapid cycle like that. You're kind of beta or you're alpha. You can't switch back and forth
Right.
like that. So, and maybe you're going to talk about this, is how this can translate to a man's strategy. You know, it's great to understand it, but you know, how do you take advantage of that?
Okay,
knowledge?
well, what we're talking about is two things. Okay, this is the short term right here. This is just the month to month. Okay, we're not talking about stretching out over years, but we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. And then again, getting back to what's the best strategy that you can work for. Well, I would say during this side right here, you're looking at upping the alpha and being more dominant, and understanding that the woman is already in that phase of her ovulation. And so there are certain game techniques, or you can be cocky and funny, there's certain things that you can do that are going to make you a little bit more appealing, and to play on those. I think it was 𝗏𝗡𝗄𝗏 who wanted to, from Married Man Sex Life, who really wanted to say, well, you need to have a really more of a balance. And I'm saying, I'll tell you right now, everybody who has come up from a blue pill beginning already has all these qualities in spades right now. you need to up the alpha. You don't need to worry about so much, I'm going to hold her hand and I'm going to make sure that she's safe and secure. This is pretty much what most guys in their blue pill conditioning, this is what they're raised for. They're not raised for this. This is for the 20% of guys who get 80% of the women, okay? This right here is the rest of those guys. This is the beta male territory over here, because they think that if they can comfort her, if they can have this rapport with her, that's going to be what gets them in later on. And they don't realize that they don't have what it takes to turn her on when it comes into that particular time. Jordan Peterson and a lot of guys, especially who are family-oriented guys, who I would say have lean a little bit more on the beta and the blue pill side of things, they still want to pedestalize a womankind. They still want to say she's infallible and she's beautiful and she's divine and she's just, I'm this lowly worm and she's just one step closer to God. And they want to still keep womankind pedestalized. So they tend to ignore all this stuff on this side. Okay, and so they only want to focus their game and their social outlook and their life outlook, or whatever they're going to do to create a family. This is all that's important to them, and they just kind of conveniently push this away. And these are the guys who, when they get to be 29 years old, and women are suddenly starting to pay attention to them, that they think that their ship has come in and their patience has paid off, and they're really, they're really ready to go and finally build a family. And all these girls who wouldn't have anything to do with them, like in the long term, when we're talking them in their party years, now suddenly that woman is necessitous and she needs to lock this guy down. Well, who's the best guy to do that with? The guy who's been preparing his whole damn life for this. And so those are the guys who get really self-righteous and they go and say, you know what, I finally, everything that I was doing as a beta guy and identifying, it's suddenly paying off now, and nice guys finish last, but hey, I finished. And so they build up this side and then conveniently forget this. It's the time between 29 and 32 years old for women when they're cashing out of the sexual marketplace. And on my own belief, I really still think that's pretty late, because I think that from a fertility standpoint, women need to have babies way before that. But they realize that if I don't lock somebody down, I'm not going to have anybody at all. And so what do we see in society right now? We see women saying, oh, I can't find any good guys, and they're 36 years old, and they're well past the wall. They're well past any time of their lives where they wouldn't have any complications with a pregnancy, and they're freezing their eggs. And they're believing that at some point they're going to be able to come back in and restart their lives once they found Mr. Right. Well, all of that stuff comes from her, well, first of all, a false belief that she's going to have that, but that her attractiveness is evergreen. And so when she hits 29 years old, she realizes she can't compete with the girls who were 24, so she's got to cash out of that. Now, the guy who's waiting for her at the end of that, like I said, he's feeling lucky, but what he does is he ignores this stuff. And it's very important that if you're going to accept hypergamy, it's not just, the most important part is not just the provisioning side. This side, the alpha fuck side, is just as important, if not more important, than the beta side of things.
𝗬𝗓𝗡𝗄𝗏𝗡